Hello and welcome to another episode of the Addict's Advocate. I'm your host, Dusty Dean, and it is my pleasure to welcome Katie. How are you, Katie?
I'm doing good today. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for spending a Saturday with me. You are my first TikTok friend that I have the pleasure of interviewing, so that's been the power of internet. It's been a wonderful thing. I realize the reach is just global now, and then that's I'm thankful for. So hopefully the message of recovery, the message of a great life awaits you on the other side of sobriety is continuing to get spread. And like we always do, I typically just let the guests go ahead and start off with the story. You know, what led you to the point of recognizing you had an addiction issue, and what you did to seek recovery.
All right. Well, I started drinking probably around 16. It was never a problem for me. I actually hated it for a long time because my body just did not respond well to that. Made me sick every time. So I just kind of I don't know, I did it, but I definitely didn't do it every day, maybe once or twice on the weekends. It was one of those things where, I binged, as a lot of people do when they start drinking with friends and stuff. So really, I didn't start drinking super heavily every day until probably about almost 5 years ago. My son is 5. He was born in July. My postpartum was really, really bad. From a mental health standpoint, it was not the kind where you want to hurt your child or anything like that. It was more about hurting yourself. Unfortunately, that was brought on by my birth. I had a really traumatic birth with him. I was in labor for 30 hours. I was induced because of high blood pressure, and I did not know that every time I contracted, his heart rate dropped significantly. So lack of oxygen to the brain. Yeah, I didn't find that out until later. There was a couple more reasons why I should have been an emergency C-section, but unfortunately there is a practice here in Fort Wayne that does things very differently than OBGYN, whatever. I did not know that. So apparently in the middle of my pregnancy, this practice that I was using was banned from one of the hospitals here in Fort Wayne because they had basically hurt or killed too many moms and babies. So the board, they couldn't do it anymore. So I was forced to go to a hospital that I didn't even know I had to go to, and it was awful. So yeah, there was 3 different things that should have been a C-section. It was finally time for me to have him, and when he came out, the cord was wrapped around his neck, his chest, and his stomach. So he was completely blue. This is a hard thing for me to talk about, so I will just say that. Normally when that happens, they hand the baby over to NICU, and NICU revives them, right? Instead, they put him on my chest and made me do it. So they said, rub his back really, really hard. So I'm, laying there, I'm in shock, realistically, and I look at my ex-husband's face, and it's just like, we're both like, oh my God, He finally started crying. His APGAR score was a 2. Some people don't know what that is, but they rank them based on specific things when they're born, and then they check them again a little bit later, and he only got up to a 6. So what that did was create a lot of anxiety because I was checking on him all the time. He started sleeping through the night at 5 weeks, and I didn't sleep for a year. So that led to me drinking. It was probably, I'm trying to think, some of these things are a blur for me, but it was probably 4 to 5 months in, I started drinking every night because I couldn't sleep. So, and it was the only thing that calmed me down. And realistically, I wish I had noticed it sooner so I could have gone on medication instead of trying to medicate myself. But yeah, so basically I started drinking then, and it escalated very quickly. About a year in, I had a mental breakdown, and they did start medicating me. However, I was drinking on top of those medications. So as a lot of people know, that does not make them work. So that's what started it. And then earlier on, I had started seeing signs of autism in him, and I was becoming very stressed out by it. And so that also was a reason why I continued to drink. And then he was finally diagnosed, and that was very, very hard. As a mom, I don't know if every mom does this with a child with a disability, but I blame myself. So I drank to cope with that feeling, that whatever. So yeah, that was a huge part of it. Also, my grandma was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer like 2 weeks after. And we were very close, and they wrecked me, and that escalated it as well. So it's hard to think about. That's two very awful things happening in a very short amount of time. And so, I'm going through all this stuff with Mac, my son, and then on top of that, she passed 4 months later. So for me, it was just the only thing I knew at that point that it was working. I was medicating. It was working at night. I'm a hairstylist, so I also was working at a salon where you could drink with your clients. I could sit there and drink right after work. And so I did. Yeah. So my marriage started failing. And as my sobriety has progressed, I have realized that I am a huge factor in that. I became somebody I did not know. And I came to know because that's just who I thought I was, which I felt incredibly guilty about. So I drank because of that as well. Being in these meetings, it is very common for marriage to end because of this, which really made me dive into a lot of things about myself, doing a moral inventory, which is not fun. Part of that moral inventory is also pointing out the good things about yourself. And through all of this, I really struggle with that. But yeah, so after my divorce, I continued to drink every single day, and it progressed into drinking more than just one bottle of wine at night. And on the weekends, I was binging and I was drinking 2 bottles of wine a day, or I was going out with my friends and I was drinking just so much. My body had just gotten so used to it. The hangovers kind of subsided. I wasn't sick in the morning. I wasn't any of that. The anxiety was unreal. I was having heart palpitations all the time. It felt like my body was just failing in certain areas. No, it wasn't failing in the sense of like cirrhosis or my kidneys or my liver, but just everything else, and the fatigue, and I couldn't sleep. I would drink until I passed out. But when you drink like that, you're not sleeping to how it should be. And I realized that was a huge part of it. I was irritated all the time. I was mad at everything, the littlest things. And now I look at it, I'm like, what? I don't react that way anymore. Why was I reacting that way? So that's good. I'm just more patient. And I've always been a very impatient person. And now it's starting to come back, which is great, especially being a mom. So able to handle a lot of things with my son in a healthier way, which is the mom I've always wanted to be. So I did hit a breaking point. I'll just talk about the last night I drank. So I work at a salon here in Fort Wayne, and we had an art show there, which was super cool. I had work during the morning, and I knew that I was going to be drinking all night. And so I got home at about 3:00. I had stopped at the liquor store before I got home, and I was like, well, I'm going to get 2 bottles of wine because I know I'm going to be drinking long enough that I'm going to need that amount. So I came home, I got ready, and in the span of about probably not even quite an hour and a half, I drank an entire bottle of wine. This sucks, but I drove to work. And I remember thinking while I was driving, there is no people can't tell that I'm drunk right now. Because I really, yeah, it was that bad. So I got to work and continued drinking, and probably drank another bottle of wine in about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours. The scary part for me was I was wasted, but I was okay. I could function. And I think when you say to like people who can drink regularly, I drank 2 bottles of wine essentially in 3.5 hours, they would be like, my body had just built up such a tolerance to it. And then we went out after, and I had 1 drink, and I was still okay. And I decided to go home. I remember going home and thinking to myself, I'm mad because I didn't leave enough wine in the bottle I drank at home to have another drink before I go to bed. And I was like, what? You know what I mean? When I look at it, I'm like, that is crazy. I don't know how I got there. It sucks. But I woke up the next morning with like regret and just severe depression, severe anxiety. And my ex-husband dropped my son off to me, and I laid in a dark room all day, and I handed my kid his iPad, and I was crying on and off all day. And finally I reached a point where I was like, I'm going to search rehabs and detox. And I didn't want to do it because I didn't want to miss time with my kid. And because that's like 30 days minimum, depending. And I just couldn't do that. So I looked up AA meetings, and I do feel as though it was a sign in a sense, but there was an AA meeting at the church I grew up in that night. And I called my mom and asked her to come watch him. And she was busy, which I totally understood. And I started crying on the phone. And she was like, what's wrong? You know, whatever. And I didn't tell her exactly what I was doing, but I told her I needed to go to church. So she was like, oh, absolutely. You know, I'll come over. And so, and it's so hard to go sit at a meeting with a bunch of other women and have to say out loud for the first time, hi, I'm Katie, I'm an alcoholic. And when I did it, I was crying. And then we were reading out of the big book, you know, going one by one. And I read one sentence and I had to pass because I became hysterical. But I left that meeting and I was like, I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I'm making the decision for myself. Nobody made me go. Nobody gave me an ultimatum. I didn't get a DUI. I didn't get in trouble. It was for me. And it's for Mac. It's for Mac. I don't know if I ever would have done it for myself if I didn't have him. And honestly, I wouldn't have. I know I wouldn't have. So that started it June 23rd. And now we're 70 days in and I'm just a completely different person. I feel good. And I will not lie. The withdrawals I experienced were awful. And after about 14 or 15 days, some of them subsided. I wasn't dizzy or nauseous anymore, so that's the good part of it. I still have headaches. Post-acute withdrawal syndrome, it can last like generally 6 to 9 months, I was reading. So, the fatigue is still bad. So, and the headaches are bad, and I wake up with them, and I've never experienced that before. So that's what got me there.
Wow. Well, a lot to unpack just off of that. Find that the correlations between people that I meet online, of course, you know, addiction is addiction, but so in 2012, it's basically this month, I'm actually celebrating my daughter's life and death from August of 2012. So I lost a daughter in 2012 through a spinal motor atrophy, and
Sorry.
wife went full term about the weekend. About 10 days before we were scheduled for a C-section, she noticed that baby was stopped moving around as much inside, and full term, and went and had a ultrasound and found that there was something tremendously wrong. Went to the emergency and had to do an emergency C-section that night. She came out literally like black. My daughter did, and they had no idea what was going wrong with her, but there were clues. She spent her life basically up at the NICU at UCSF San Francisco Children's Hospital, and had 10 days of life, and ultimately we had to do a DNR, and we had to say goodbye to her on August 30th of 2012. So that was yesterday. You know, she would have been 12 years old, and it's always a melancholy time of year for us, and it's, you know, you feel like you're floating through it, and you're being held on by something else, and at the same time it's such a traumatic experience. It took me like 6-7 years before I could talk about her without it ruining my day, and and there's a lot, you know, people don't understand. I mean, we all, unless we experience grief or trauma, right, and depending upon the varying degrees of it, we can't understand, right? We can't understand what that does to somebody's psyche, what it does
Mm-hmm.
to guilt, shame, and the constant jockeying in our heads about what it is we could have done. So I empathize with you on that. I can only imagine that that was a harrowing experience. So, and I get it. I mean, I wasn't drinking during that time, but I was a weed smoker. I'd been a weed smoker for 20 years, and I put alcohol up in 08, took it back up in 15, quit in 16, and then took it back up in 22 and 22. Yeah, 22, and basically in August of 23, I was like, I'm done. I just passed my year of sobriety, and and yeah, it's I'm impressed that you were able to do this with just AA meetings. I mean, a lot of times, alcoholism can be very dangerous to go simply cold turkey. I actually reached out to an AA meeting when I was going, hey, I need help. And
Mm-hmm.
it was something that they were like, hey, like the amount of drinking that you've done in your life and the quantities that you're using, like you should probably go into a detox because you need to get medically assisted on your detox. And I found out a lot about my mental health as well. A lot of the reasons why I was using, and
Yeah.
that had been a godsend. I figured that if I didn't, I don't think most people can address their addiction without addressing mental health. I
Right.
firm I firmly believe that. And
Yeah.
the thing that's interesting I found about addiction is that when, especially like even though like the physical symptoms may not, may kind of subside, in your using, I found that just that whole link, brain to nervous system, it's like my nervous system was fried, and I
Yeah.
found that I wouldn't be having the physical stomach aches, hangover feelings, but I was just fried. I mean, and everything was just firing so damn hard, trying to find a better way. I do appreciate that that you said that you were doing this for Mac, but you are doing it for yourself. I mean,
Right.
you really have to be doing this for yourself, right? It's scary to think that if you didn't have Mac, where your addiction would have taken you, because obviously
Right.
it took you down some depths, and I personally had a come to Jesus moment, at the beginning of August of 23, and I went to an ER. I ended up going in to see a psychiatrist and a psychologist, but it still wasn't enough for me. I literally needed somebody to throw me in a room, lock the door, throw away the key, and see
Yeah.
me in 4 to 6 months, because I was like, I couldn't control it. I ended up having like a dozen benders between the time
Yeah.
that I admitted I needed to get help and the time that I was just like, okay, I'm done. I'm completely done. That whole moral inventory thing is tough because we realize that I think it's good for everybody to do a moral inventory, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Those that don't even have an addiction issue.
Yep.
Because we all could be better people than what we are. But I'm glad that you've realized that there are a lot of great things about you, and that you've also,
Well, I haven't yet.
you know,
Haven't done that part of it. I'm working on it, but
well, I can
mostly
tell
all the
you this
bad things.
right now, your
Oh,
strength in doing this, going live with it. I mean, you have 27,000 followers or something like that, right? I saw it and I was like, wow, good for you. I think you were at the time, you were like 45, 50 days sober, and you
yeah.
were talking about it, and you were letting yourself out there. You were willing to be vulnerable, but you're also a beacon. You're a beacon of hope for those that sit there and will look at you and go, I relate to you. And I'm dealing with the same type of struggles, and these were my coping mechanisms. And now I see that I can be better in so many ways. I can be healthier. I can be more present for my kid. Um, and because I have a kid who's my stepson has developmental issues. He's 29 now, but APCAR score from, I wasn't obviously around during his birth, but my wife says that APCAR score was really low.
Yeah.
Had, a lot of cognitive issues, was basically told that, he was going to be solely reliant, his whole life on us. And he carries a job, goes out and does Uber Eats, rolls around on
Yeah.
his electric bike, is smart in a lot of different areas. And I think that, they are blessings in our life. They teach us a lot about ourselves, as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think they help us be better parents, and just better understanding, just about, all walks of life, that this world is made up of so many differences, and that's the beauty of it. There's no playbook in these things, right? The things that we live called life, especially when they're traumatic and we don't have somebody to rely on. I had a friend of mine who had a child that had brain cancer, and basically found out like in his early teenage years that he had brain cancer. And he says to me, he goes, I knew for 4 years my kid was going to die. Because I knew for 4 years that this was going to be an inevitability. That trauma, that grief, that inevitability, that fear, that pain. He literally said, when I lost my kid, within a month, my house gets flooded because I have a water line break. I come up to a foot of water standing throughout the whole house. And then like a week after that, I'm driving over some mountains and both back wheels on my truck and I'm flying off the axle, like out of nowhere. And he goes, that night, he goes, I was shitting blood and a full body rash. He goes, my body was like shutting down from the stress, from the grief, from these things. And he goes, and at some point, right, his friend said to him, he goes, here's the deal. He goes, people may not truly get what's happened to you, but their heart bleeds for you. They're in pain with you, even though they can't, replace that pain for you. And he goes, but at the end of the day, he goes, you have to make a decision. He goes, are you going to be a good dad or a bad dad with the rest of your kids? He goes, and so kind of make a decision and get on with life. He goes, because nobody's going to blame you for whatever decision you make, because they go, I don't know how I'd deal with it. I'd probably wallow in a corner as well. It's almost a slap to the face, but it's like, yeah, I mean, and sometimes it takes people a decade to get to that point. It's not like, it's an answer where we go, okay, that sounds good. I'll be the good person and I'll go out and pretend like, regardless of how much existed in my life before this moment, I'm just going to forget about it. I mean, it molds us and shapes us into who we are.
Right.
Was your family aware of your drinking issues?
I know that my mom saw it after my divorce. I lived with her for 8 months. So I know she saw it. I don't know if she actually thought, oh, she's an alcoholic or just you're drinking too much. As far as my dad, I don't know, but I haven't lived with him. I hid it so well. I was isolating. I was drinking at home alone. And sorry, Mom, but when I was living with my mom, I knew that she was starting to notice it. And sometimes I would get home from work and she was already asleep, but I had a bottle of wine. So I would just take it up to my room and I would drink the whole thing and I would hide it in the trash. I would put it under a bunch of trash. So I didn't want her to think that. So when you start hiding it, here's your sign, right? So
yeah.
Yeah, got to that point. When I told my I think they knew that I drank a lot, but no, they did not realize that it was at that level. Again, why would I? I mean, I drank at family functions and I drank quite a bit. So I know they saw that, but every day, so
Yeah, no,
yeah.
it's almost like you're holding on for dear life at family functions, trying to make it seem like you're not drinking that much, just so that way you can get out of the family function to go and really drink, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we have those stories. The thing that I found, I was smoking for 20 plus years, and for me it was almost, if I never picked up alcohol, I probably wouldn't have gone into rehab. Because
Right.
I mean, we'd end up kind of being my medication, if you will. And because I was dealing with undiagnosed mental health issues, and the attempts that I found with psychiatry wasn't working. But I recognized that the relapse was so hard into alcohol. The first time was from 2015 to 2016, and I stopped because in 08 I got a DUI. I got a
Okay.
DUI, and of course married with kids, and I was just like, you know, and that was the thing, I joke now that I said that was probably the most sober I ever was, even though I was drunk and driving and got the DUI on that occasion because, had I been pulled over the other times, it might have been much more of a consequence. But the level of not giving a shit anymore, in the drinking and also just the cascading of mental health. In August, I was just like, in August of 23, I literally didn't care about anything anymore. I realized I was so depressed. The drinking, escalated so severely, I just, I was scared. I was scared because I'd recognized, that there was a time when I had felt better about everything. And I knew that I truly needed to address my mental health. So, I mean, I've basically been diagnosed with a form of bipolar. And I think that explains a lot. And it's interesting because now I was on quite a bit of meds when I started my detox, and now I've waned it down to just 110 milligram dose of Lexapro daily. And I find that my emotional regulation is fairly tight. Every once in a while, I find like it'll dip pretty hard, and like that kind of scares me because I go, oh, "Wow, this is holding on longer than it has before," and it makes me start itching for a remedy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to hold on, or I have to basically get on the phone with doc and say, hey, I do have some, a couple of emergency options, for medication that will kind of snap me out of it, or at the very least, just make me sleepy enough that hopefully I sleep through it.
Yeah.
But and there's a lot of personal turmoil that goes through this. Why am I like this? Why do others get to live life without needing something like this, but yet I'm the one that's crutched with this? And
Right.
you kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, and I think that what's important, especially with the disease of alcoholism addiction, is this notion of separating ourselves from it, right? I mean, it's not who you are, right? It's something that you have, right?
Right.
And disassociating yourself from, because then I think you can also look at it more objectively and recognize that just as much as a diabetic needs to control their blood sugar, you
Right.
have to abstain in order to keep the disease at bay, because it is progressive, right? It will, if the relapse, I recognize that my relapse, even though I was so far removed from it, the first relapse was one issue, but the second relapse was really bad, the one that ultimately had me seek help. And I recognize that about the disease of addiction being so progressive, because I mean, I was destroying myself. The amount I was taking in, the constant mental obsession over it, waiting to get to have
Yes.
a drink, it's just consuming. And so it's scary. I mean, it really is scary, and that loss of control, and just that and that double-edged sword of just wanting to feel better and trying to figure out what's going on between your head that's causing you to drive that direction.
Yeah. I
So
think
at the
for
very least,
me,
go ahead. Go ahead.
sorry. I mean, I think for me, like when I was waking up in the morning and feeling, like my body hurt, I started thinking I should just drink a little bit, like a little bit of wine, whatever, and it'll get me through the day. I did not, because I mean, I'm a hairstylist. I work with people. They're going to know. So I didn't, and I just trucked through. However, periodically on weekends, if I had a little bit of wine left in the bottle, I would drink it in the morning. Then I would get angry because I couldn't keep drinking. I had to wait, you know? So I had things I had to do. I had, my kid, etc. And it's like, so I came to realize like, no, I can't really. It's frustrating.
It is frustrating. I think we try to find that place where it's like, I just want to be back to okay. No more physical symptoms, and kind of be in that. I've toned my anger's toned down, and so I'll find that sweet spot, right? And unfortunately, that's constantly a moving target as well. You can't ever
Yeah.
find a sweet spot, right? If I could just take just a little bit of something every day and it just kind of level me out all day, I'd be good. But that's not the way it works. Are you outside of AA? Are you going to therapy?
I do. I have for
Okay.
years.
Okay.
I have a really good therapist.
That's
So
good.
he's watched me through it all when I told him, because he had mentioned it to me, like, do you think you should go to AA? And I'm like, no, I can do that myself. And so twice I tried to go 30 days. I had mentioned it in one of my TikToks. Um, I I did. I made it to 20 days exactly each time. And the first time was when I realized my marriage was over. The second time was, oh, I've made it 20 days. I have a wedding to go to. Who doesn't drink at a wedding? How am I supposed to get through this wedding? I was wasted before I even got there. And then I was like, the person I went with, she was like, should we go? I was like, yes, we absolutely should. I didn't, yeah, it was bad. So, and I said in the video, and I analyze it a lot. Why did I only make it 20 days? The first time, no, I don't think it was because, 21 days you break a habit. That does not apply to alcohol. And I know that now. But The first time it was not that. The first time it was like, because, F this. This sucks. I'm going to drink about it. Second time was, I truly don't think I wanted to break my habit yet. And because I thought that it would do that with alcohol. There's no way. So being in these meetings, the relapses that people have years, from it, or 6 months from it even, it's like, I'm scared because right now I'm in this, they call it the pink cloud or whatever, right? So I'm in this pink cloud where I'm like, I'm going to do this forever. I'll never drink again right now. And I know it in my heart that I am not going to do it again. How do you get there? People get there. Something happens. You think, oh, I can have one drink. I'll be fine. I know my brain does not work that way. So I'm conscious of that. But it's terrifying to go through all of this. And then one day, oh, what was the point? And, I'm on TikTok, all of these followers. Who wants to make a video? Hey, sorry to disappoint you. I relapsed. Let's start over. I don't want to do that. So TikTok holds me accountable. AA holds me accountable for sure. So, and like my parents know, my family knows. Do I want to disappoint them? No. Do I know if they would be disappointed? I feel like yes. I don't know. The risk of that, I'm not trying to find out. So mentally, my mental health sucks as well. Bad. And I always have. Always. That would wreck me. I know it. And I don't know if I could come back from that. Ugh, sucks.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no. And I I see two realities. One is I think the community would sit there and go, well, if you were to relapse, it's like that's the disease. I mean, it's cunning, baffling, powerful, right?
Yeah.
It does what it does, and you're never out of the woods with it. I think the community that you're reaching out to would be empathetic of you. Would just hope that you recognize it, because again, the guilt and the shame is part of the disease, right? It wants you to feel like that. So then that way you go, well, I'm sure as hell not telling anybody that I relapsed. And since I've already relapsed, I might as well keep this relapse up until I have the strength to sit there and go, okay, I'm going to stop again. So then I start hiding it again. And I start sneaking, and, watch my kid because I got to go and find a corner I can get drunk in. And yeah, I mean, that's what it does. It starts plotting, it starts conniving and plotting and like, okay, how can I get away with this? For how long can I get away with this? How can I, drink and then 3 hours later need to be somewhere and people not recognize that I'd been drinking? It's a cunning little thing. I mean, it puts its fingers onto you, and I mean, it's a class in psychology. I mean, it really is. It could be a whole 4-year education on how powerful and crazy addiction can be. I had someone who had started abstaining, and they wanted to still have that weekend, go out with the girls, have dinner and maybe one drink, maybe two at the most, right? And can I go back to being that sort of normal person? And they attempted to do it. They actually had some serious health issues back in the day when they were using, and the doctors ultimately kind of given them a clear bill of health after they've abstained for quite some time. And they just were like, I just want to be that normal person with my girlfriends and be able to have a cocktail and then just go about my week, as always. And then maybe, if I see him in a couple of weeks, go and, be able to go to dinner, have a drink, and that's it. And so she ended up going to the extent of buying a breathalyzer because she understood what the metabolism rate was of people using alcohol, just to see if her body was truly in line with it. And she did it. She went to dinner and had a drink with some girlfriends, and then she kind of just checked her breath and she noticed, first of all, that her metabolism rate was lower than what a normal person's was. So she knew that even though biochemically everything seemed fine, her ability to metabolize alcohol had changed. But she said the thing that drove her the absolute craziest about it was that she just started ruminating about when she was going to get her next drink. Addiction is so time consuming.
When they know your name at the liquor store, like they moved. This is terrible. They moved where my favorite wine was from where it was at, and he saw me standing there looking at it like, what? You don't carry it anymore? Like, I'm just looking at their dumbfounded, like, oh my God, what do I have to get then? Like, and then you got to look around. That's stupid. And he comes over to me and he goes, hey, we moved it.
You're like, why?
And I did. I was like, that makes sense. And then I'm like, you see me in here all the time. You know exactly what I buy. You came up to me and said, hey, we moved it. Oh
Are they
my
moving it
God.
to tell you needed to take a break? Or are they moving
No.
it just to throw you off?
Hey, you're killing our supply here. Can you stop? But no. But yeah, they would be like, hey, how was your day? Like in a friendly way. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, and I
Yeah.
was just like, oh my God. So it's fine.
Yeah.
They're probably like,
Um,
what happened to her? Where's she been?
I know, right?
I don't know.
And it's funny because I'll go get my lottery from the liquor store I used to buy from.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, how's it going? They know me by first name. I'm like, good. And I basically, I was able to tell him the other day, I'm like, hey, I got a year. He goes, that's awesome. He goes, good for you, man. I'm like,
Yep.
yeah. I'm like, it was getting away from me. It was so bad. It was so bad. And it's expensive. I mean, shit. It's like,
I calculated.
Yeah.
Shit, I didn't have money like that. And then I look at it and I'm like,
apparently you did.
Oh, okay. Apparently cash tips don't count, right? No, they do. But yeah, I actually ended up going to, I mentioned it in one of my videos that I went to a non-alcoholic bar here in Fort Wayne. It recently opened, and that was my idea, because I was like, yeah, I can taste it actually breaking the rules. I am 70 days in. And I thought that it was a good idea to do that. And I had mentioned, whatever, my drinks of choice, dry red wine or tequila waters, right? It was like their grand opening type of thing, and I ordered the tequila drink. Why? As I'm waiting on my drink, I take like a little shot of the rosé that they had, and I soon hesitated. I hesitated, and I was like, do I do it? Okay. And so I drank it and I was like, shit. Like, I remember thinking, oh, this is not good. And I got my drink and I said, I drank it so fast, thinking I would feel it. An alcoholic's mind is so crazy. And after I drank it, I was upset that I even did it. And then I went out to dinner. Like, I had gone there with some of my friends, and like we went out to dinner, and I was in a funk. I was trying not to be, but I really was. And I don't know if I masked that or not, but I came home and I was like not okay. And I colored. Coloring is my hobby, and I do it a lot. Like a lot. I buy markers and colored pencils and coloring books now. Like, that has replaced my wine. So, which I don't spend as much on those things that I did on wine, but it relaxes me. So I did that. And then I was like, I'm going to bed and going to forget about this and wake up tomorrow and it'll be a new day. It was not okay that day. So I was angry.
Yeah, I don't drink non-alcoholic beers for that same reason, because I just find I'll just slam them. I'll just slam and slam and slam, because I think those are the closest things that taste like alcohol, right?
Right. Yeah.
And
it's like, what?
And I had a guy at work tell me, he goes, I was learning how to make a non-alcoholic old fashioned. I'm like, what the hell's the point?
I know. That's what I said. I was like, why? What is the point?
Why would you do that? It sounds disgusting.
Yeah.
Not
good.
No,
I panicked,
I'll find I
actually.
just end up getting bloated, from a 6-pack of non-alcoholic beer. I'm like, that was no fun.
No, I remember waiting for my drink and panicking, like, wait, does this one not have alcohol in it? Are we sure? Like, okay, do they have non-alcoholic plus alcoholic drinks? Did I mess up? What? No. It's a non-alcoholic bar. But that's where my mind went. And I don't know. I don't know why.
Yeah. I've heard of that trend happening, and there's a lot of different organizations, manufacturers that are making so many different non-alcoholic things. And I just sit there and I go, I really don't see the point.
Right.
I really don't. Just drink a water or drink a soda or something. Right?
I know.
But, the thing that's interesting about, putting yourselves in situations where, you're not, even just places that are familiar to you when you used to drink, is that they say a lot of times you can actually have withdrawal symptoms even from that. Like, the body has cataloged it so well that even if you don't partake in things like that, because the memory's so ingrained that you feel you kind of have, withdrawal symptoms from it. So it doesn't surprise me that you were feeling kind of like shit the next day, even though you were completely sober.
Yeah,
It's
mentally. It made me hot. Like, I felt feverish after I
huh,
drank it, which I think that might have just been what it was. But I was like,
yeah,
then I questioned it, you know?
yeah,
It
yeah,
was weird. I'm not going to do it anymore because there
yeah,
is no point. I drink sparkling water.
yeah,
Everyone says, drink sparkling water, and it does work. And you can like put juice in it and make it fun. Like,
right,
like create your own mocktail without the non-alcoholic factor in it. Just
yeah,
do
yeah.
something fun. I don't
Don't
know.
call it a daiquiri, right?
Right. This is my fancy
uh,
sparkling water.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So obviously, a sober community has been important for you now. You find that you have good relationships with people because it sounds like you're doing an all women's class in.
I do. I go to that one every once in a while. I actually really enjoy both sides of it. Men and women. Discussion groups are my favorite. 12-step meetings are okay. I don't love them. Um, I just don't. Some of the steps are really, really hard for me to accept that I have to do because I don't want to.
So surprising realizations of being sober. What do you think has hit you? I mean, you obviously are young into it because it's going to be an evolution. Just the first year for me has been an evolution. So, but you got anything for me?
I am. I mean, there's a few of us that are early, but yeah, we're the young ones. But I'm thankful that I'm not the youngest by myself because that would probably feel weird. But my realizations is people don't only drink when they socialize. They go do other things. I never did. If it did not include drinking, I was not going because I can stay at home then. It just did not sound fun to me. So, yeah, people can do fun things without drinking. Doesn't mean you're going to lose all of your friends. Did I lose some by choice? Yes, I did. Because I need people in my corner. I need people that understand it and are willing to be empathetic. Some people are rude, or some people are hurtful and they don't think they are. So, yeah, like I can't have that in my life right now. It's draining and it makes me want to drink. I can't do that. Sometimes it's just healthier for you to let go of something that's really not benefiting you and hasn't in a long time. So, anyways, yeah, to surround yourself with people that care because there are, maybe you'll lose some people, but maybe you won't. And if you do, people in these meetings are so welcoming. So, you can talk to them, you can call them, you can text them, you can go do things with them. And the best part is you have this in common. You already have this in common. So you can segue into, oh, we also have this in common. We become friends. I have made friends in this. And it's really nice because I've had the same friends forever and since high school. So, and I love them. They're my best friends, you know? But for me, I have to also like make friends with people that don't do this just because of the commonality, And I don't want to bother people. I don't want to be like, hey, I'm having a shit day. And I'll tell you why. Because I can't drink and everyone else can. And, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to do that. And
Yeah.
so now I can call somebody and be like, call my sponsor. I need you to help me right now because I am on the verge. I'm about to lose my shit and I don't want to. So doing that, and I find now that I hadn't gone to a movie in theaters since before COVID because of streaming services. I could watch it in a couple weeks, But I went to 2 movies 2 weekends in a row, and I thoroughly enjoyed it because I wasn't sitting on my phone while I'm watching it, you know? So I was able to disconnect and really focus on something. And, the people I went with were sober. And I was like, these are things that people do, you know? So yeah, doing stuff like that. And like this morning, I went out to brunch with a friend I've made, and the the first thing the server said was, hey, we have a margarita on special right now. Would you like us to tell you about it? And I was like, no, we're good. Can I get a sparkling water? Like, can you put some strawberry syrup in it for me? And I'm like, that was a $10 drink. I just spent $10 on a sparkling water with strawberry syrup in it. I could have gotten a drink. You know, it was like, what was the difference? I thought it would be cheaper to not drink when you go out to eat, but either way. Yeah, so that hits you weird. It's like I feel like I should wear a shirt. Don't ask. Don't ask me if I want the specials. I don't know. But that's okay.
Touched on some good points, and again, kind of going back to the reasons why we do this. This is a self-care event, right? And some would say it's selfish, and it's like, you know what? That's fine. That's completely fine, because the only way I'm going to be good to anybody else is if I'm good to myself. I start there. I start loving myself again. I start taking care of myself, right? Then I can be wholly present in everything and everyone, right? And sometimes that means, you know what? The way that I'm going to be self-care is that I remove myself from people and I go Netflix it for 6 hours on the couch by myself eating bonbons. That's going to be my self-care event. At least I'm not drinking myself to oblivion.
Right.
Or I'm just going to go take a drive and I'll see you guys later. But I think also with time, your confidence just increases. Your ability to, the weight of, no, I'm not having a drink today. You become more confident in it. You're able to say no easier to the waiter and not have it affect you or ruminate about it. But there's also there is the beauty of being present in life. I think is just one of those things. And that's actually to begin with, for me, it was very challenging. When you remove alcohol from your life and remove any sort of substance in your life that you're addicted to, it's a loss of a relationship. You've lost that relationship, that thing that you did, that thing that you hung out with. And now all of a sudden you're left with this void of time, because even in your addiction, right, time moves at a different pace when you're under it, right?
Right.
And so now all of a sudden I've got all this time and it feels like the clock's going tick, tock, tick, talk, and you're like, what in the hell, right? And so there's the loss of that relationship, the loss of that time, and now you're like, shit, what do I do? Do I just sit here and twiddle my thumbs all day? And so that's daunting, right? And you don't want to white knuckle it, right? Because if we white knuckle through life, it's I even had a therapist say, what the hell are you even doing this sobriety thing for? I mean, if you're so miserable now being sober, it's like, just go back to drinking. I mean, shit, at least you might enjoy your short time here on earth. But I think being present is huge. I think that we are higher functioning people, just as far as the way that our brains are constantly moving, that, the addiction and things like that sometimes just slow us down so we're more manageable in our own heads, that that we will appreciate presence of mind, in the moment a lot more so than people who've maybe never suffered from an addiction and just kind of do what they do through life, not knowing any rhyme or reason as to why they do it. So I think that's a blessing. Any gems of wisdom, any parting notes that you feel that with the realizations of recognizing your addiction, the moment of clarity that realizing you needed to stop, or just now being on this side of the equation, something that you didn't recognize that you recognize now that you feel like people that are suffering should?
I think, well, I'm going to say this. I think if you are thinking to yourself or knowing that you are hiding what you're drinking, that's your sign. You should never get to the point where you have to hide it. You're not a teenager. You didn't get a bottle of wine or vodka, whatever, from an older kid and then you know what I mean? Like, you're not hiding it from your parents because you're an alcoholic. So I think hiding it is huge. Mental health, you're going to notice it. If you don't notice, look for the other signs. There's other signs of anxiety. There's other signs of depression than obvious ones, right? So yeah, I just feel like the signs are there. If you think you drink too much, Google it. Google's an excellent source, and do it for you. Do it for you. Yes, kids. But in these meetings, they say you are first. You are doing this for you so that you can be better for them. So, yeah, I just hope more people can realize it. I wish I had sooner. I did. And luckily, I hit my breaking point. Sometimes it takes so long for people to hit their breaking point. I don't know. I think that's it.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. We don't need to have a car lodged in a tree, having killed someone to be the rock bottom, right?
You don't
And
have to have gotten a DUI.
you don't have to have gotten
I
a
never did.
DUI,
Yeah.
right?
I
Right.
almost did, but I
Yeah,
didn't.
and that ended up not changing my mind either, right? I mean, I did for a period, but I ended up going back to it until I truly understand. And I think that unless people are willing to be humble enough, and alcoholism oddly breaks you down, I think, to the point where you are vulnerable, right? You're willing and open to change. You're willing for a suggestion because your suggestions on how you manage life just aren't working anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's huge. Katie, I appreciate this time. We've been doing this for over an hour already. I don't want to take up any more of your day. I'd love to have you back as this journey of yours continues,
Yeah.
and discuss the new revelations that may have happened for you in your life. Best of luck. They say that we accomplish a lot even in our addiction, that it's going to be amazing to see what we accomplish when we're out of it. So best of
Absolutely.
luck to you. I've never been to Fort Wayne, Indiana, but I hope that the weather is accommodating to you, and you
It's
enjoy the
pretty
rest
gross
of
right
your
now.
weekend. Is it?
Thank you. Thank you so
Okay.
much for asking me on here. I really appreciate it. So
I
it's good
appreciate you. My
talking to you.
pleasure. You
Yes.
as well.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks. Yep. You too.
Bye bye.
Bye.